Mr. Barry. I'll let him say his last name. And he's going to talk about totems emerging in the Gondwana Link.
I'm going to have a few slides here, and then I'm going to pass over to a colleague in a second. It's a joint project. We've got a collaborative effort is what most of these presentations are all about in terms of getting people together to do stuff, and the environmental movement is built on collaborations. A couple of characters here I'm going to be introducing as we go through the story. So have a look at some of those faces. We've got Keith Bradby and Amanda from Gondwana Link. We've got Uncle Eugene Eads in the foreground, Errol Eads, and my colleague Glenn Stephen there. So Greening Australia has been doing restoration and revegetation for a long time, and our conventional methods are to do direct seeding and some seedlings, and we've been scaling up over time. We've been achieving some really good results, and we're happy with the direction that's going in. And we've also been engaging with traditional owners for a long time. Down in our neck of the woods, Noongar was a property that Greening Australia acquired as part of the Gondwana Link, and early on we opened the doors and have been working with the traditional owners. That was a meeting place that was requested by the elders and was built, and that was a photograph from the launch. And we've also been employing traditional owners from the area to do seedling planting. But there's always been a sort of a parallel process. We've been focusing on our our ecological restoration, and the TOs have been focusing on their camps and cultural restoration and programs until this gentleman came along who really brought some of this together. And with that, I'd like to switch over to Uncle Yui, who's standing by down in the southern part of WA to give us a little bit of insight into the overview of where the project came from, and then I'll take it further after that. Hey, Uncle.
Good morning, one. Good morning, all there. It's great that I could become involved with this discussion this morning to share a little bit of the journey of healing land, healing people. First, I want to just acknowledge the Larrakia people for being able to sort of share a story from me, but onto their gathering. And yes, look, I'm a Noongar man from down this country, which is in our traditional areas called Goreng area. And it's been a long time since we put our foot back on the budja, on the land. And it was back in 2005. Got to go out with a visit with Greening Australia and Gondwana Link, and visited the landscape that looked sad and sorry, but needed a healing. And on the way out through the farm gate, it was said, Eugene, this is Noongar, which is Aboriginal or First Peoples budja, First Peoples land. You do the things you need to do that will make a difference for your people. And the rest is history, basically, because of all that was to follow. And what was to follow was gathering with the elders who have been my roadmap, basically, and they've given me a cultural obligation to do the things that I need to do that will make a difference to healing the land and also heal our people. And some of the things that followed was the development of a meeting place, a place where we could come and gather as the Indigenous or First Peoples to talk business about our food, fruit, medicinal plants that need to be sorted out and brought back to life, basically. And then that following that, we had many other projects, which is about healing land, healing people, with the planting and restoration. And then it came to a point in time where, through sleep, I had like the old people had spoken to me and said, Eugene, there's one part of the land that hasn't been revegetated. Put our storyline back in the land in art form that will share two cultures sharing on the one land, a story of restoration. And it was really powerful, but so very emotional as well because of the fact that it was so important that we put the story back in the land, which becomes a bush university, a classroom teaching and handing down the stories of yesterday, stories of the old times coming back again. Dreamtime returning to Kulungar, the little children, so that they will learn from the Budja, from the land. So all that came to pass and happened while working in partnership with a friend of mine, Justin Johnson. And then, of course, what followed that was two things followed that was with the cultural restoration was the development of a storyline, the walk trail that needed to go back into the landscape as well. And a storyline that will be used and was used as a rites of passage for our people to come back through, to go through a learning of how to be a good carer for country and a responsible person that take good leadership and into the future with the younger generation of young people coming through. And just beyond that was just the totem structures, which we identified amongst our people that had clan groups that had totems and that was connected to Gondwana Link development and greening Australia property. So we also put that into play as well, and it's telling a big story, a powerful story of reconnecting to country and reconnecting to culture while healing the land.
Okay, back to you, Barry.
Thanks very much, Uncle Yui and Keith. We could have the slide back, thanks, Alice. I'm just going to show you some photos to show the process that we went through. And yeah, just the nod to Justin Johnson, who did some work a couple of years before this project. So we had to, after Eugene had his visions and we got elders on country, and then we had to talk to somebody who could start putting this into life and get a bit of a plan together. So the first step was to engage the artist, and that was Errol Leeds, and he developed some initial forms, and the three totem animals that were identified was the goanna, the kada, the nau, the malleefowl, and the yonka, the kangaroo. And then there was a question about where to put these things and finding sites, because we've been doing a lot of revegetation and there wasn't a lot of areas left on some of the properties. But we managed to, there was an area on Yarrabee, a Greening Australia property just next to Stirling Ranges, that had been set aside for an artwork. So there was an opportunity there, and you can see where the malleefowl and the kangaroo are in the landscape. And just to show you how far away we are from where we are here in Darwin, you can see at the bottom there, we're probably opposite end of the country in the very southern region of WA there. So the next step was to take Errol's artwork and get a tech-savvy person, and that was Amanda Keesing from Gondwana Link. And she took these images and these artworks and she geo-rectified those in a GPS and created some shape files. And then we came back together as a team and we brainstormed. And then the next question was, well, how big are these animals actually? And we started looking and measuring on the GIS, and bloody hell, this goanna is going to be 300 meters long. And we started looking at how we're going to revegetate it. Do we use direct seeding? Do we use seedlings? There was a question of colors and that sort of thing. And then all the way through the process, we realized we didn't have that many species to even play with, because it was one of those projects that got going a little bit late in the season. And then the request came from Errol, well, how about we really want to make this 3D? So we want this thing to not only just represent the shape, but we want it to have a shape where it's got a form. So we had to think about putting taller trees and along the spine of animals and that sort of thing. So I'm just using the Kara, the goanna, as an example here. So this is essentially our planting plan. So you can see on the sketch there, we've got different species, and we had to figure out how many meters apart they needed to be planted and all of that. And you've got the seedlings there. We also put seed together, low shrubs, to do the outline of the of this giant goanna. So then we needed somebody to implement. Now it's fine doing some artwork with a pen or a paintbrush, but Glenn basically did some painting with a tractor and a direct seeder being towed behind it. And that's quite a skillful thing to do. So I'm just going to show you a quick video, 10 seconds of that machine. This is on another site, but it gives you the sense of his paintbrush or pen that he had to use to put the shape into the landscape. And then the drone operators, there's always drone operators. And there were quite a few of those. And it's really, without the drones, we wouldn't be able to see what this looks like from up above. And we could see Glenn's handiwork with the tractor for the first time. He thought it was a little bit wide in the belly, but that's okay. Yeah, fat is healthy. So then the next thing was the seedling planting team, getting all the seedlings. And you'll notice that Uncle Yui, who we just spoke to, is part of that, as is Errol. He's a ranger. They were all involved. And then started planting the seedlings a few years ago. And I've just got a little clip of that. For those of you who haven't experienced the sound of a clunking potty putki on a cold morning, this is to just get you in the mood. And every clunk is another seedling in the ground. There's an irritating drone in the background, but you can hear the clunk of the potty putki as they go through the landscape. Back to the drone guys, and just another bird's eye view. And I don't know if it's possible to see it on here, but there's a couple of Aboriginal rangers planting just over there. This one's a close-up, so you can just see they are busy with the eyes of the goanna. And incidentally, in the background, quite a bit of that is restoration from a few years prior. So then we start getting the first emergence. This is just about a year and a half after the actual planting, and you can start to see the goanna taking shape, which is pretty exciting. Because when you stand in the paddock, you really can't see it. You've got to go up. And then, yeah, another year and a bit after that, a couple of years, you can see the trees and shrubs are starting to make shadows as it emerges. And emerges some more. So this was a bit of drone work that we did just a month or two ago. And there's a close-up, and some of the things which we were really happy about was the selection of the blue mallee for the eyes. We wanted the eyes to stand out, so that was pretty cool. You can also see a couple of gaps in the outlines, of course, and there are some small shrubs that are still emerging from the direct seeding, but we will have to go in and do some more some seeding there. So what about the other animals? Well, we planted the goanna was on some pretty hard country, some pretty clay soils. And I know when they did some infill on this property, they were using pickaxes at one stage. We're going to go back there with augers and drills, the power planters in the future. And on the right, you can see the outline of the kangaroo on the Penia property. That's doing okay, but we also had a bit of an incident where we had a bit of cannibalism going on because some kangaroos were starting to eat themselves. So I will take it as a compliment. So just to end off, a couple of observations and learnings. It's been very rewarding working as a team to implement a new project. it's good to try a new restoration approach. It was a lot of fun, and at the same time paying the respects to the Noongar culture through the process. Also, this project really kickstarted a bit of a ranger program with the Noongar Rangers, which has actually led to quite a few other ranger programs in the area and quite a bit of funding from other sources as well. This was originally funded from the WA government, the state NRM project. We're currently running some more seed picking capacity building teams through a fund from the WA government, and also through Woodside, we've got some teams up and running as well. And the rangers are not just getting experience in one or two things. We're trying to give them the whole suite of experiences. So they're actually learning. There's a team down in Carrydale doing tractor training today and learning about direct seeding, fire training, plant ID, and trying to get as many experiences and tickets for these guys as well, so they can be the future restoration practitioners. There's been lots of cross-cultural learnings. It was really good to go through that whole process of technology transfer. There's going to be some infill planting required in some of these. It's a little bit like large-scale gardening. It's not a one-off thing. You need to go back, and that's something which we all recognize with any restoration project. It needs a bit of work. But the opportunity of having that open space at the Yarrabee property has also provided now some open space between the goanna and the circles for grazing, because there's nothing planted there, and that gives an opportunity for the native grasses to come back and for the black-club wallabies to do some grazing there. I've mentioned the other animals needing a little bit of work. Amazingly, the goanna at Yarrabee was spared in the devastating fire that came out of the Stirling Range National Park late in 2019. 60% of the property that we had restored actually got burnt, but it was like these two tongues, and in the middle of it was the goanna. So there's some good magic happening there. And I suppose the other thing is that native species do not need to be planted in rows or blocks. And there's some opportunities to go back and do some monitoring to see, well, what's actually happening, what species of fauna are using these. And even though there's a lot of cultural value and they look pretty, what are the ecological value of these sort of plantings? And I guess the question is then what could be done next? More animals, other shapes, and other stories. So I just wanted to acknowledge some of the people who've been involved with providing photos, videos, artwork, and the funding. And to end off with a little bit of a drone landing. So strap yourselves in, and we'll land on the goanna. Thank you very much.
What an awesome project. We've got a few minutes for questions, so please, any questions? Everyone's just blown away.
What are some of the other ideas for the art space to the landscape there? Sorry, did you get that?
I did, but maybe for the
oh, okay. Yeah.
Vote.
Scott Meyer here. Just wanting to ask what were perhaps some of the other ideas for bringing the art space to the landscape there? Any others you've been playing with?
There's a couple of other areas that we're looking at which are open and could potentially do with some of these sort of artworks. There's one in mind which is a cultural heritage site which was left from a recent revegetation project that we did. And yeah, we're talking to the traditional owners of that area to see what they would like to do there. Yeah, I'll leave it up to them to make some determinations. But I think more of the same would be required. And as Uncle Yui said, just more sort of connecting of the stories across these landscapes would be something that would be really good to do in the future. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yep.
Has there been much like interest by like tourists who do things like geocaching and flying drones over landscapes or whatever? Have you had much kind of like interest in that way?
No, not really. There are some projects in the pipeline to do some eco trails through this area, and one of the stops is definitely these totem animals. So in the future, I guess that would be something to look at. We did have a farmer give us a call and say, "What's going on? I've just been flying over this property and I saw this giant kangaroo." So it definitely gets noticed from above. Yeah.